I'm on. All right. Hey guys, how you doing? All right. I apologize. I had gotten the email, the questions for the candidates today out to Deborah, who was supposed to disseminate them to everybody, but she's been tied up with the airport today. So she apologized and said, can you send them to Jen, which was like 3 minutes ago. So Jen, have you distributed to everybody? Great. So I just want to say, first off, apologies for if your specific question that you're super passionate about did not get included. It was not intentional. There's just a lot of overlap. Some were very specific. I think I tried, and then I try to kind of keep it broad-based and have more of an overview. Yes, Councilor Hershey.
I didn't get any questions from Jen or you.
You did not get questions?
No.
I am just sending them right now.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry. Obviously, if there's follow-up questions, raise your hand, jump in. If there's a question that was your question specific that I didn't get around to asking or didn't ask in the correct way, again, raise your hand and add the context you need to. But I think, is there any questions about how we're going to do this? Sorry.
I just sent them, so hopefully you have them now.
Yeah, and I was going to say, Jonathan, it may have been a quirk. If I was on the same email with Deborah, they only came in about 15 minutes ago through our system.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, does everyone? I mean, I want to make sure that we feel comfortable with them, and some of this was people didn't get questions to me, and then once I got them, I was busy with other stuff. So I don't think I got anything to anybody probably until about a half hour ago. So probably that falls on me. Do you want to just take about 2 minutes and look over the questions and kind of give a thumbs up if they look good?
So Jonathan, are you asking all the questions? Is that what you're saying? And then if we have to elaborate, you want us to elaborate?
Yeah, I think just with the challenges, unless people want to ask specific questions or take turns, I'm fine with that as well. But I thought just because it's somewhat difficult to transition from person to person. If you'd rather do that and ask questions, I don't care. It doesn't really matter to me.
I just wanted clarity.
Sorry. Jonathan, so what you're going to do is I'll ask all the questions, and then if we want to, we could follow up with one of those questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
That sounds a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah, let's just take like the next 3 or 4 minutes to look over those questions.
Hi, Tony.
Say again.
Hi, Tony.
And Paula.
Hi, how are you doing?
Charlie.
And Charlie. And Shelley. And Jennifer.
And Jen.
Hi,
And
Jen.
Steve Boy. And Monica Wolney. How's school? Is it real school now?
Next week.
Oh. My sister started today at Basalt Elementary with all the kids back. Oh my goodness.
She's a big kid. She a young woman who goes back to school next week with all the
middle school. Yeah. But Glenwood Elementary and Soper started today, right?
Just K through 3rd.
Right. Yeah. Sort of.
So is Steve joining us?
Steve is not.
Okay.
He told me that he wouldn't be able to be here.
We probably should get started. I think Monica needs to.
Yeah.
So.
And I don't want to lose her connection.
Okay. If it's okay, I'll just jump right into it. Monica, how are you doing today?
I think she's muted.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Doing great. Thanks for having this meeting with me.
Great. Well, I'll just jump right into it.
Monica, do you have video?
I think I do. Hold on one second.
Thank you.
I'm on my kid's computer and.
Yeah, that's good. It would be nice to see your face.
Right there, right?
Ah,
Can you
there
see
you
me?
go.
Yes.
Yep.
Great. Thanks.
Great. All right. I know you're on a timeline, and I apologize if I've taken 5 minutes away from it, but I'll just launch right into it. Monica, if you were appointed, what are your goals for the next 6 months?
I want to say my goals for the next 6 months are to bring communication and voice from the citizens and council and make a better relationship between the people and council in the city.
There is a follow-up question. I have several ones down, but let's see.
What
Is there
can
good?
I-
So the question is there good communication? One of the other questions is there good communication and engagement for the citizens, from the city to its citizens? And if not, what more specifically could be done?
Well, I think currently there is a disconnect between the city and its citizens. I think there hasn't been much communication between both of those parties. I think a lot of times the city council goes upon their own emotions and their own beliefs versus reaching out to its citizens. Voorhees has never reached out, being in my ward, has never reached out to any of the businesses. Asking the local businesses that are in Ward 2, they also can tell you that Voorhees has never reached out with any concerns in a lot of topics that were discussed. So I think there is a disconnect. I think there's a disconnect between not only the city and the citizens, but there's a disconnect with the county and the city. I don't think that's, I think there's much room for improvement.
Monica, this is Charlie Wilman.
Yeah.
When you say we don't, council doesn't, there's a disconnect with the citizens and we vote on a motion. Can you give me an example of something you're talking about where you think we did that?
I think, for example, bringing up, there's a lot of things, for example, the security guard that was hired to be in downtown Glenwood Springs. There was nothing that was allocated in regards to or posted in regards to, if we need a security guard, downtown and using them for, that's one thing. Another thing would be, for example, the way the city went on emotion when it closed down and did emergency powers and closed down their local businesses. When states said that we're essential, I know, you know what, you could say that you were protecting the citizens, but you did not give the small businesses a fighting chance, is what I'm saying, to basically survive. I know you didn't know that the fire is going to come on August 10th and do another whammy and cut us, cut our businesses again. But Newcastle, Eagle, everything Basalt being open, but Glenwood was closed. And I feel like the council did that mostly on emotion versus in a knee-jerk reaction versus reaching out to its business owners, to its citizens, and going based on facts, or how, things were not exploding in Glenwood Springs. We were not in a bad situation. We jumped the gun on a lot of things.
And I appreciate that. We're representatives of our local wards and or at large. And so I guess my question is if you had to make a decision, there's not time to go out and poll people in your ward, how would you make that decision?
I think there is time to do a citizens vote. I mean, I think you can put out a citizens, vote, a poll, or, you can put something out on social media. You can put something out on a report, you know, in the paper and get that in the next day and say, you know, we're having a vote. Let's see what to do. Get the citizens involved. I think that, you know, council's there. They're the voice of the people. So being the voice of the people, the council deserves to listen to its people versus making what I said was emotional or, you know, decisions based on their own opinions. It's not, you know, per se your opinion, it's the people's opinion, what they think.
And Monica and Charlie, sorry to cut you off, Monica. I think we got to answer that question. We're still on question number 1 of 15. So I'm going to try to ask for maybe more short answers instead of essay answers. Monica, yes or no, do you plan to run for election whether or not you're appointed?
I can't answer that right now.
Okay.
I mean, I can't answer what's going to happen in the future, but right now I am.
Okay.
That's my plans. What's going to happen in 6 months, I don't know.
Gotcha. Thank you. Monica, what do you see your role as city councilor?
The voice of the people. I want communication to be between our citizens and the council. And that's the only reason why I'm running. I have no political aspirations. I have no agenda. I want the citizens to be more involved. Especially, you know, in my ward where nobody has ever had any say on what's going on and nobody really had a good communication. Us citizens would talk together, business owners, but it needs to be heard with, you know, it needs representation. It needs someone to listen.
Could I follow up with that, Jonathan?
Sure, of course.
So Monica, as long as I can remember, and this includes when Mr. Voorhees ran, there's never really been any opposition in that ward. Usually the person runs unopposed. How would you, as council person representing that ward, get maybe more community involvement, or, you know, how would, I mean, you say reach out, but how would you do that to get these businesses in West Glenwood and the residents in Oasis Creek and where you are more involved?
We are very close as Ward 2. I know my neighbors. We are a very reputable business here in Glenwood Springs. Our reputation and reviews say that, you know, it speaks for itself. Not only the customers that come in and the guests from out of state or from Denver or wherever, but also the other owners. So we are very involved with everybody. If it's the residential person living, you know, behind us, or if it's, you know, the businesses. My husband also sits on the water board for our district here because we are on spring water. So we've always been vocal.
Thanks, Tony. Good question. Thanks, Monica. Specifically with your role as city council, one of our roles is to supervise our city manager. How would you interact being over the staff with our city manager and the city staff? How do you see your role in regards to staff, I guess?
Well, let me throw a disclaimer in here to get the record straight. I know I've been very vocal, and some may say that I've been harsh. Some say I'm brutally honest. But at the end of the day, we may not always agree on everything, and we may debate, but I always say that a debate is good. It grows positive knowledge. But I feel that at the end of the day, we could all work together. I'm not against the current city council. I'm not against small government. I just believe that, so regardless of what anyone thinks, I just feel that there is room for improvement on all aspects. And I think that the city council and, you know, can be done better. And Are there flaws? Yes, but then I have flaws, everyone has flaws. But I feel if we work together, and we put all our thoughts together, you know, maybe it'll be a better city council.
All right, thank you. What do you see are the biggest issues facing Glenwood Springs over the next 2 years or the next 10 years? It could be the same thing, by the way.
I think there's it's kind of a general question. Any specific topic that, I mean, anything that you want to kind of narrow down for me a little bit? I mean,
no, I mean, it's, where do you, I mean, I guess, why are you running? What are the issues that you want to see? I mean, we've heard definitely, you know, bringing a voice to the citizens. Other than that, what are the issues that in the next decade you think the city has to grapple with?
I think there's a lot of things that are going to challenge Glenwood Springs. I think there's a lot of challenges now. I mean, there's some things that, you know, the city, you know, it has nothing to do with the city, it's higher legislation, but there's, mostly I'm running because of the fact is also my kids are growing up in this area, and for them to, it has to be a family-friendly place and something I feel that we have to do something to bring some of these families back. Lately, I've seen Glenwood going in a direction where the families, there's a turnaround. Families come and they stay for 5 years and they move. There's not enough attractions. There's not enough things for families to do. There's not a lot for these kids to do. And then we have other bigger problems if it's drug issues or whatnot, but dealing with our youth and giving them something to do and making this a family-friendly area, not only as a tourist, because I mean, our first thing is we are a tourism-based city, and I know we focus on that to bring in a lot of the revenue, but I think a lot of times we forget that this is where we're raising our kids. And I think we need to focus on that as council and a city too, because a lot of the things that we used to have when we first moved here are leaving. If it's bowling alleys or movie theaters or, or even, attractions now, and especially now when there's COVID and the kids have nothing to do. And just having stuff for families.
Thank you. Monica, what do you feel about the ballot issues that directly impact the city, specifically ballot measures 2A and 7A?
So you're talking about 2A for the TABR?
The Gallagher.
The Gallagher Amendment? Or are you talking about 2A was the TABR using the money, the funds for TABR to use their funds, and sorry, 2A was when TABR wants to keep our funds. Legislation wants to keep our $1.9 million. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about the city's ballot initiative 2A.
The city, which was, sorry, you have to tell me, you have to refer me. I was looking at it as a state, because 2A, I was looking at that.
It's a Gallagher Amendment that we are able to keep excess tax revenue from, because we won't have a decrease in taxes, we won't have an increase, but it essentially would cost our fire department $200,000 a year. And we would see a slight decrease in our property tax.
So you're looking at, if you're asking me in regards to the Gallagher Amendment?
The city Gallagher specifically.
To be honest with you, I didn't look into that. I was looking at 2A in regards to the TABR and the 1.9. I was not looking at the city one, so I'm not sure. I have not overlooked that, so I can't answer that question for you.
What about 7A?
And 7A was in regards to, because I know Gallagher as a whole, and I'm against removing Gallagher, I could tell you that. But and then 7A,
7A is a Colorado River district, quarter mill ask.
I have not looked into that one yet. I'm not there locally.
Okay. How big of a threat is the RMR mine, and are we doing enough to fight it? And conversely, are we doing too much?
No, I think it's good. That was the Love Glenwood organization, and I think that is I think they're doing a great job. I think that the city putting funds into that to and I believe the county is fighting that, correct? I believe that I think that is a good, that is a good thing to Glenwood to fight the mine. Sorry.
Okay. Let's see. What do you think the city should do to bring businesses in that can fill the large gap of our empty stores?
I don't think the city really has anything in regards to the big box stores. I think that the fact is that, the city can't control the tenants. They can't control who wants to come in and who doesn't want to come in. I believe that first you need to build that community sense and have, people want to stay here and live here. And people have to want to spend here. Target could have built a super Target and they still, went, because when actually I spoke to Target in regards to that, asking corporate why they didn't go ahead and build a super Target when they had the room. And I was told that most of their business is tourism. They make their money just like we do in tourism. They have their tourism months, and most of their business comes off of starting in July. So in regards to the big box stores and trying to fill them in, we keep losing them because I don't think there's enough people in this area that are spending money. They're not spending as much as they should locally.
Thanks. What do you think is the city's greatest economic opportunity?
In regards to,
well, just opportunity or threat for the economics of the community, either one or both.
I would say, we got it with, getting shut down is, like I said, we're a tourism based town. So being shut down, when businesses shut down, that, really hit the city funds as well. And then the fire came, and I think, fire has a big impact in our town. Fire has, fire danger.
Okay. How involved should the city's role in addressing the affordable housing issue be? What could we help do to solve this? And just as maybe a primer, ideas have been community-wide tax, developer fees, deed restriction requirements.
I think we need affordable housing, but 2 years ago we got rid of affordable housing, and we said that developers no longer need affordable housing, need to build with affordable housing. And I think that was before some of you being on council. I don't think that should have gotten rid of 2 years ago. Maybe we wouldn't have the problem now with all these apartments going up and none of them being affordable. I don't think we need any more structures going up as for housing. It'd be nice to see some of these being brought back to affordable housing.
How would you propose that we do that?
I think in this current economy where it's at right now, it'd be kind of hard to, just because building costs are so up. Everything's, the average, rates of contractor and how much wood went up in material. I think that it's hard even to go back into building. I think it's too hard for someone as a developer to go in and build something as affordable housing anyway. How do I propose this? I think that the city should have a certain percentage that is I know how other states do it is the city owns a certain percentage, 30%, and usually in each town for affordable housing, and they're the ones who rent back to the people. That I know that's how it was back in Illinois, and that is an idea, but.
Monica, we just got a couple more minutes and I don't want to leave without giving you a chance to, what would you want us to know about you as a candidate for this open position that you think is very important?
And just to be clear real quick, you only have till 3:30 or do you have a little bit longer, Monica?
I have a little bit longer, sorry. My husband just took that's why I was looking
Sure.
over, looking at me with time, but then he took on and he actually left. So I have no political experience. I'm not running here telling you that I'm a politician, or basically I was a white collar that went to blue collar, and I'm running a hotel, and I'm a mother of 3. I'm a housekeeper, a cook, and everything else in between. But I basically gave up everything and came to Glenwood Springs because it was a great town to live in, because this is where we wanted to raise our kids. It was a safe area, and moving here 10 years ago, it was amazing. We had bowling alleys close, we had movie theaters down the block. It was safe. It was great. Is it changing? Yeah, it's changing. Glenwood is changing, and every day I see a change. And maybe I see it because I'm in West Glenwood and I'm in more of the industrial parts. And as I call it, industrial, I mean, we get more of the truckers and more of everything passing through this way. I think I'm running one because I don't want Glenwood to lose its character and the reason why I actually came and moved here with my family. I want the safety. I want to bring in, I want to make sure that it's a family-friendly place, that our focus is to have things for the kids, and just people to communicate. I feel that I don't know if it's because of COVID and everyone being so isolated, and no one interacting personally with everybody anymore. I feel like there's a total disconnect. There's a disconnect with just what's going on with the city and what's going on with the citizens. And sometimes I just feel like if, for example, when the grant was given out, we didn't even know about it until we read it in the paper. And it was just, I get it, we weren't in boundaries. And my thing was just bring equality and bring us all together because we all deserve a fighting chance for something that you guys are handing out. And when I spoke to everybody in my district and I got them together and I walked the businesses, nobody knew about anything that was going on. A lot of the hotel owners had no idea until I picked up the phone and started calling all of them and asking them, did you hear about this? Well, you need to voice your opinion. So I feel that sometimes I'm already busy trying to, put food on the table for my family and just staying afloat in these tough times. But I feel that I feel I should have someone there that's representing me, representing the people that should come and be like, send me an email or reach out to me. If you're living in my ward, how hard is it to walk and just communicate with people and say, well, this is what's going on, or what's your opinion on this? Instead of, just basically not doing anything. There's got to be more communication. And that's basically why I'm running. There's no agenda. I have no aspirations, political aspirations. I feel that there has to be some kind of voice. That's it.
Monica, can I ask one and go back to a comment that you made earlier? Because I also hear from other neighbors and residents that they see changes going on in town that they don't care for, and they want to see this. They want to see the residents retain their quality of life and keep it a family-friendly place. What do you see as the city's role in that? What ways can us as the city government help to work on that?
I think there has to be some kind of a push, and I don't know if the city has to, just reaching out to maybe other corporations or other things, or just to get more family-friendly things together. I think that, for example, the tourism, the tourism fund that we have. If you look at that, a lot of that goes into administrative fees. And if you look at how much of that money actually goes into promoting Glenwood, and you can say, well, we have Strawberry Days. Well, Tourism Fund doesn't pay for Strawberry Days. The Chambers does. So out of everything that we're supposed to be promoting, basically all our money is going into brochures. And we're paying a Denver company to market while paying the Chambers to outsource it to Denver so they can market for us. So if we're looking at it on that aspect, and then, it gets taken away, and then I guess it gets taken away for maintenance in downtown. If we took that money and we did something, so not only can we bring the visitors together, but bring the kids together and, make something like family friendly, like even if it's a barbecue, cookout or something, and, or they have the barbecue competition. There's so much that we can do. I know someone mentioned mountain bike, trails or competition or something. That would be great. Just bringing other organizations or other things that we can do as a community together, because we're capable of that. We don't have to hire somebody, outsource somebody just so they can tell us that we're going to throw a, you know, some kind of festival or whatnot. We can, I think if the city put their minds together, we can have enough things in this town that not only will bring the citizens together, but will bring the families out together. And that's what we need. We need the kids to be involved in this community as well. Instead of sitting at home on their electronics and not being social. We need to get them out to the park and doing something. And I know you guys can say, well, this year we had that New Year's thing. And I don't know if any of you guys went. I did. I went to that New Year's thing. I sat at the Riviera, and because it was freezing out and it was so cold, we couldn't even get outside to enjoy New Year's. And I think my honest opinion is, and as someone that sees my guests coming in, I think that when Thanksgiving at Hotel Colorado, amazing. There's a great turnout. I think that's lighting of the Christmas tree. Then we have where the city gets together and we do that Santa and stuff. But what about our dead seasons, our November, October? Then we have April. Those are some of our really bad months where there's nothing to do. And most of the time the kids are actually out because there's nothing going on, no sports, it's mud season, no sports going on. There's no tourists either because the weather hasn't, you know, summer's ended, but winter hasn't come skiing. So why not throw something in those months and bring in people, but then bring the communities together and bring us all together. So it's a win-win, not only for, you know, tourism and for the city funds, but it gets our families out. So the families here don't have to travel to Steamboat or to Frisco or anywhere else where they're throwing all these, or Breckenridge, where they're throwing all these events or festivals. We can stay in our own town. I mean, I think it'd be great. There's so much we can do. The tourism money brings so much and it just needs to be restructured.
Thanks, Monica. What is your vision for transportation in Glenwood Springs for the next 10 years?
Well, I'm glad we got a new bridge. Although it's so confusing that it has caused more accidents with these roundabouts, and I get more complaints on it now than I've ever had from people that travel. But with that aside, with the bus system, I see a lot of locals using it from down valley. So rifle, parachute, silts. They're using the bus system more than Glenwood residents trying to go up valley. Tourism, they don't use the bus system going up valley. If they do, they use their cars. They're not on the bus getting around Glenwood Springs. But I think every town needs a bus system. And RAFTA is a good thing to bring the workers up valley. I think the traffic is getting worse from everybody moving into town. And it's mostly people moving up valley a lot of times, and it's the workers that are going up valley. To be honest with you, this discussion should have been when the bridge wasn't even built yet, with the bridge already being built and it being 2 lanes this way, 2 lanes this way. I'm not really sure what to tell you besides there's going to be traffic. And unless we take Midland and we convert Midland into another road that can go up valley, I think there has to be other roads out of Glenwood Springs. I think that, you know, but I think that's not a city issue. That's more of a county and state issue. because it's hard to get from, and we saw it due to the fire, or if there's a rock slide or anything. I think that's discussions that need to be, that the city kind of needs to press on with the state or the county. But as for going up Valley, I mean, it's going to be traffic unless we take Midland. And like I said, we convert Midland and we make that into another highway or kind of road that's, not, but living on Midland, I wouldn't want that. So I don't think that's the option either. So I'm kind of at a link of words when it comes to traffic. I mean, sorry, deal with it. There's nothing you can do.
All right, Monica, I just have, I think I have just one more major question, and then if other people have follow-ups, but homelessness, specifically the camp behind Walmart and downtown, you've mentioned before with the security that was hired, has been an issue that this community struggled with for a while now. Any ideas on how we can address this, or things that you think you could bring to the conversation?
In regards to homelessness, and I'm going to say this in opinion that is if I was a council person, I believe that this is not a city issue. I believe this is a state, and this is a state issue. And I don't think the city has enough manpower. It doesn't have enough funding. It's a bigger issue. And I don't feel like the city is responsible.
Any other questions, Monica? We have, we started you about 5 minutes late, so if you're able to, I'll give you 5 minutes on the back end. So it seems like we have like 6-7 minutes left of a lot of time. Anybody have any follow-up questions or clarification or additional questions? No? Okay. Michael, do you have any questions for us?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate you putting your application in, and I believe we have a special meeting later this week where we'll make our determination. And thank you very much.
Isn't it next week?
It probably is.
20,
Yeah.
27th, I think.
There we go. That sounds right.
Yeah, I was going to say the 27th isn't this week, I hope.
Everything's going so fast.
Can't go fast enough. Monica, thank you so much for taking your time. I know how busy you are with the business to run and everything.
Thank you. Thanks, you guys.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So is that a Thursday, the 27th, right?
Yes. I don't know.
Oh,
No, it's a Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday? Oh,
Yeah.
Because Halloween's Saturday.
Hey, Jonathan, when we start with each candidate, can you explain that all of us put questions together and came up with them?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Is there anything else is there anything else that we want to, I mean, it kind of is what it is. We don't want to like go super divergent with the same set of candidates, but are there other things that, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is jump in at any time. I think Shelley and Charlie did. I appreciate that. Tony did as well. So I guess, Paul, if you want to jump in any time with clarifying questions or anything, just, don't even bother raising your hand, just jump in.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I didn't have any at this round.
Okay.
Thanks.
I think it works. We got to follow the procedure. Jonathan, you cover the basic stuff, but I thought it was a good comment. They should know it's coming from all of us.
Yeah. Okay, well, we can actually be on time. And if Ray looks like has been promoted. So Ray, hey, this is Jonathan. And if you are able to unmute yourself and start your video, that would be fantastic. Ray, are you able to hear me? There you are.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think I've unmuted.
All right.
Can you hear me?
We
Good
can.
Yeah.
So you passed the first test, Ray, how to get in a Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
It's the first time I've used Zoom, but I've used some others, so I sort of had a clue.
Well,
Nailed it.
congratulations, you did it. You're in.
Ray, it was brought to my attention that I did not, I guess, do introductions or let you know kind of what the format is, but we're going to have about 15 questions. We don't need to like have long essay answers, but all these questions were asked for and compiled by each one of us. So some of these questions, several of them are from us, maybe a bunch are from individual persons, but we've all contributed to these questions. Ray, you and I met a couple of weeks ago. I'm Jonathan Godis, Mayor. Does everyone just go around real quick and do introductions?
Sure. Ray, I'm Shelley Kaup, Mayor Pro Tem.
Hey, Ray, and Charlie
Hey, Shelley.
Wellman. Ray and I have known each other for a long time as well, so.
Hey, Charlie.
How you doing, Ray?
I'm good.
Hey, Ray, I'm Paula Stepp.
Hi, Paula.
Nice to meet you.
And hi, Ray. I'm Tony Hershey.
Hello, attorney Tony.
Tony.
Are you doing something to make yourself come up on the screen before? I mean, I see everybody at the bottom.
With Zoom, when you talk, the box should come up, although you can pin a box or you can do a different setup. But it's different than like WebEx or Google. So when the person talking, that usually comes up. But
All right.
But if
So
you
I don't
want,
need to do anything except answer questions then
well,
from now
Ray,
on.
if you want to see everybody though, up at the top right of the screen, you can press, there's a gallery view that kind of shows everyone. And then there's speaker view. Yeah. If you can't see us all at once.
It looks like I only have, okay, if I scroll over, then I can see everybody. Yep, I'm good.
All right. Well, Ray, we'll just launch into it. And people might interrupt with other questions and follow up. So I hope that doesn't throw you. But Ray, if appointed, what are your goals for the next 6 months?
I have no goals of my own other than to assist council making the best decisions and plans for the city that we can come up with. I haven't been following.
Oh, did
I
that
haven't
kick you
been
off?
following. Sorry, I had an incoming call that I just declined. I haven't been following what's been going on or what you're up to or what's upcoming other than what we talked about when we met a few weeks ago, Jonathan. So I don't come with any agenda other than to do the best I can to help.
Okay. I know it was in the paper, but do you have any plans on whether you would run for re-election if you were appointed or not?
I don't have any plan at this point other than to evaluate whether or not I'm a valuable contributor to the council and to the city. And if I feel that I am after the trial period here, then I'd be inclined to run for the seat.
Ray, what do you see your role as a city councilor, in your role as a city councilor?
Reacting as rationally and as logically as possible to the issues that are before the council at this time. As I get acclimated and more aware, I hope I'd be able to help with the future planning issues.
And what do one of the roles of a city councilor is interacting with staff, specifically our city manager, and understanding our role with that, as well as a budget oversight. What do you see? How do you see interacting with those two areas of our responsibility?
First, I would need to understand the budgeting process and financial condition. I don't understand right now, but I think I could get up to speed pretty quick on that. I'm sure that there's never enough money. There never is. So there has to be some hard decisions on where that money gets spent. And I would welcome being part of those decisions. The staff, I understand, manages and prepares all of that and takes direction from council as to what the priorities are.
Okay. Ray, what specific skill sets and experience do you think would bring value to this council?
So I've been a project manager on fairly large construction projects that I was responsible for estimating the cost and managing the cost through the construction. So basically full charge for budget and operations. I also owned my own company for 17 years where I signed the front side of all the checks. I can say that we were a successful company for those 17 years. Certainly we had some ups and downs, but in the end, it was a successful company. And then I returned to management through consulting and through being an employee for Kiewit Corporation, which is a highly respected and highly competent company. So budget management and budget responsibility.
Ray, what did you do for Kiewit?
And of course, through all of my career, it's been primarily heavy civil type work. For Kiewit, I worked with Kiewit on San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge and on the Hawaii light rail project, 10 miles of elevated light rail construction. And then worked with them in the pursuit of a big bridge in Montreal, Canada, the Champlain Bridge. I had a total of 5 years working directly for Kiewit and about 2.5 years working with Kiewit as a joint venture partner.
Hey, Ray, with your experience, obviously in project management, and you had mentioned earlier that you're interested in what future planning issues might be coming up. Can you give anything more concrete on what you feel about what those future planning issues might be that you're interested in, or is it just in general?
In general, I think my experience would contribute best to any of the civil projects that are coming up. I understand that the South Bridge crossing and the expansion of Midland through Glenwood, Glenwood Park and airport area is coming up. If it's not too late, I may have some positive input into that process.
Thanks.
Thanks. Ray, what do you see are the biggest issues facing Glenwood Springs over the next 2 years and over the next 10 years?
Over the next 2 years, I suspect that there's going to be some concerted effort to try to get back to some sense of normalcy and predictability. Over the next 10 years, I think transportation has got to be a big issue. It appears that either traffic has increased to where the new bridge is already becoming obsolete, or it just wasn't that much help to begin with. But the traffic backup and gridlock in Glenwood Springs is, I think, negatively affecting the character of the community.
Can I follow up on that, Mr. Godis?
Please.
Ray, you know, traffic is here. It's in Los Angeles. It's in Denver. It's certainly in Aspen at their entrance. What do you think Glenwood can do to address this? And we're not going to build another bridge, and I don't know if we're going to build a bypass or a tunnel. What can we do practically and affordably to address this problem?
It's a good question. A lot of the options have been sort of squeezed out over the last 20 years. So the options become more and more expensive. But part of the reason that the options have been squeezed out is because the planning and determination to have a solution to something that we haven't seen. It needed a solution. We should have seen it coming, and it wasn't in our face, so we didn't do anything about it as a community. You know, the studies were done 30 years ago now, saying that there needed to be another way through Glenwood besides Grand Avenue. There still needs to be another way through Glenwood, or Grand Avenue is going to become a 6 or 8 lane highway somehow. And I don't think that's desirable for anyone.
Ray, one of the things that comes up from time to time is because Grand Avenue is so crowded that, for lack of a better term, the people passing through take detours through local neighborhoods. How do you see that we should address that as a city council?
The only option I see is making that more difficult than Grand Avenue. More stop signs, more pedestrian crosswalks, so that it's less desirable to detour through the neighborhoods than it is to just stay on Grand.
Ray, let's see. Ray, what do you feel about the ballot issues that directly impact the city, specifically 2A and 7A?
Remind me which they are. I haven't voted yet. I'm still studying.
2A is the City Gallagher and 7A is the Colorado River District.
First of all, my first reaction is that any increase in taxes is undesirable. Any increase in taxes is undesirable from my perspective. I think the citizens are taxed adequately and should get more return on their contributions than what they're getting right now. The Gallagher Amendment, as far as I understand, is dictating the balance in the total revenue from property taxes, with 55% being from commercial, I presume that's commercial industrial, and 45% from residential. I think that that's a fairly good balance. I think it probably, for overall economic health, I think that's probably a pretty good balance. I think it's gotten distorted because of the rise in property values, but that's a market force, and it affects both commercial and residential. So as far as I've gotten right now, I don't believe that we should change the Gallagher Amendment. I think it should stay the way it is, absent any other convincing argument that I've seen so far.
And then what about the Colorado River District?
The
right?
Colorado River District, I don't understand why they need more money. I don't. They need more water, but I don't know that they need more money.
Ray,
So Ray, on both those issues, the property taxes have gone down for the residential side of things. The property taxes for business is always at 29%. And the problem we're trying to rectify is once it goes down, it takes a taxpayer's vote to have it go back up. And then that's because of Tabor. So what we're asking on 2A in the city is that even if property values, taxes go down again, that the fire district would still retain the same amount of money to run itself in the next year or two, instead of dropping with all the other property taxes. So it's really just like this one part of it. We're saying, can we just stay at the level we're at and not drop again because it's going so low, it's hard to support the fire district?
Is that only for the city? Isn't the Gallagher Amendment on the ballot for the state?
It is
it
for the
is.
state, but this is the city, this is one just for the city to retain that level of tax.
Sorry,
Not
Ray.
to increase it, but to retain the level.
Yeah, so the state, just for clarification, the state does have a ballot issue, but if that fails and the city passes, then we would de-Gallagherize on behalf of the district and the city.
Complicated stuff.
Yeah.
And you know what, this isn't really, we probably don't need to get into a philosophical conversation about tax policy either, so we can jump on.
Let me, before you do, Mr. Mayor,
Sure.
please. Ray, you made a comment, said any increases in taxes is undesirable. And I sure understand that neither I nor any other citizen wants to pay more money in taxes. But city costs continue to go up, as does government costs, to maintain infrastructure, to operate the city. Salaries go up. You got to pay people more money to keep good people, things like that. How do you generate the revenue to pay those higher costs and to fix the things like infrastructure in the city without increasing taxes?
Good question, Charlie, but my initial reaction is that sometimes we have to learn to do more with what we have than always ask for more. Sometimes we have to say no.
Okay. Ray, how big of a threat, this is particularly important, I think, to Ward 2, but the whole city, how big of a threat is the RMR mine? And are we doing enough to fight it? Conversely, are we doing too much?
I've tried to stay out of the mine issue because I know it's really heated, but what I have studied is enough to think that I have a hard time seeing how that mine expansion is financially viable to begin with. Yes, aggregates are getting scarce, but they're not scarce enough to warrant the expenses that they're going to have to incur in order to market those aggregates. Having said that, I also think that if in fact they have a legal right as a property owner and have the mining rights to that stuff, then I think just fighting it and trying to say no is not as effective as trying to make sure that they do it with the minimal impact. Now, obviously that makes a big difference whether you live in up on the side of the hill that's looking at it, or whether you're a ridge over like I am in Ward 2, further over here, that I'm not going to see it. So it's easy for me to say it's not so bad as everybody's making it out to be.
Ray, what do you feel about the city committing? We committed over $1 million over the last several years to in legal fees, public relation, in anything we can to fight it. How do you feel that was money well spent?
I do not.
Okay. Ray, this couple economic development questions for you. What do you think the city should do to bring businesses in that can fill. Let me rephrase it. We have a lot of empty, large, big box stores. Office Depot coming up, American Furniture, Safeway, Kmart, blah, blah, blah. What can we do as a city, as a municipality to fill those stores? Or should we?
Well, if the city has an interest in filling those stores, then I think the first thing, the city should fully understand why those stores are empty. I don't know the answer to that. I suspect that part of it is that they're difficult to get into and out of. Why is that? The traffic pattern in West Glenwood at the mall is one of the reasons. It's hard to get in and out of there right now. At Office Depot, what used to be American Furniture in that area over there, it's difficult to get in and out of. I don't know who's responsible for those roads there, if that's part of a PUD, if the merchants are responsible for maintaining those roads, or if the city inherited those roads. But it's not very fun driving around in there. If they were viable, there would be businesses there.
And do you think the city has a role in attracting or doing tax incentives or spending taxpayer dollars to retain businesses or to attract new businesses into those locations, regardless of traffic pattern?
Well, only after a thorough study that the city's going to get a return on its investment. That's a hard one. You know, maybe we are definitely in a mixed economy. It's a mixed capitalist and I don't know what you call it, but government involved economy. So government has some role in promoting that economy, but remember, it's other people's money. And there are also some fiduciary responsibilities that go along with being other people's money.
And
was that evasive enough, or was that?
No, that's great. No. Wrong answer, Ray. No, I'm kidding. This is kind of in the same vein. What do you think is the greatest threat to Glenwood Springs economy in the next decade?
I'm reminded of the Joni Mitchell lyric that paved paradise and put up a parking lot. And I have some concerns that we have maybe overdone a good thing here, relying as heavily as we do on tourism, that we're trampling what made tourism so attractive to begin with having just too many people, too much traffic, and not having managed that process.
Go ahead, Shelley.
Oh, Ray, so if I could ask you to just expand on that a little bit, because that's something that I also hear from residents and people in town. What do you think is the city's role in trying to, for lack of a better way to put it, maintain our quality of life in Glenwood Springs for our residents?
I think the city's role in general is maintaining the infrastructure that we have and keeping the city a good, healthy place to live. I think if we keep the city in decent shape, that the rest will fall into line. But if we get behind on the basics, then everything else follows that suit also.
Ray, wait, what do you mean by get behind on the basics? What does that mean for you?
That means keeping our roads up to at least some kind of standard that's not that doesn't require four-wheel drive to get around town. The improvements that just happened in Cedar Crest are excellent, and I know that was a big expense. But the longer we wait to do the proper maintenance, the bigger the expenses become.
And I don't know if you said earlier that you didn't have a lot of familiarity with the budget, but what are, assuming the hypothetical that our budget for 2021 that we're about to pass, hopefully in a couple of weeks, does not have any extras, no beautifications, no traffic calming, no flower pot water, assuming all of that, where would you create money? What department or what fund or what area would you say, in order to keep the city moving forward with the basics, streets, water infrastructure, this is where the money should come out of? What would be your priority as a council person?
I have no idea. But to go back to flower pots and that sort of thing, if you hit a pothole while you're looking at a flower pot, the answer to that question to me is obvious. So I'd much rather not have the pothole than have the flower pot.
Okay.
But
Can I ask one more thing, Ray? Then what, kind of as a the contra to that is, to my first question would be, what do you feel is the city's role in attracting and bringing tourists to Glenwood Springs, specifically the city government's role?
I think the city government's role is, as I said, maintaining the city infrastructure so that it's an inviting and accommodating place.
Right. Ray, how involved should the city be? And what's our role in addressing the affordable housing crisis? What could we do to help solve this?
I don't think it's the city's role to be trying to manage or create affordable housing. I really don't think it's the city's role. What I've watched from, I mean, we dealt with this back when I was on the County Planning and Zoning Commission, and I've seen what they do in Aspen, where they have a lot higher property tax revenue than we do here. And I haven't seen any of them that work particularly well, unless the city really intends to get into the business of being our landlord. And I don't think that's the city's place. I think that if businesses want to have employees who live in town, then they need to pay them what it costs to live in town. I think if the school district can't get teachers, then they need to look at their administrative costs and how their budgets are appropriated between the teachers and the administrators. And I think they need to be prepared to say no to some things. I know they're a bit hamstrung for the federal funds and what the feds require in order to get those federal funds. And there's a lot of wasted money in the school district.
Well, Ray, and I think the school district's actually a really great example. They built, I think, 80 or 90 units for their teachers because of part of that was, I think, a $15 million designation in the last, in the 2015 or 17, I think 2015 bond ask of the citizens they passed. So overall, $122 million revenue. And I appreciate employers should just pay more. But I just saw a sign on Wendy's the other day said starting wage $14 an hour. I used to always joke that the minimum wage in Glenwood was $10 an hour, and that joke I guess gets old every year, and I have to update it $1 every year. But but that's not a feasibility for a lot of restaurants or retail locations. So, in the vein of just paying them more, would you be supportive of a minimum wage, a citywide mandatory minimum wage?
No, I would not.
Okay.
No, I'll tell you why I won't, because I think it distorts the free market and doesn't end up being effective. It sounds simple. It sounds like that ought to make everything go away. Just paying more on a mandatory basis. But it doesn't. I think the ripple effects and the follow-on consequences of having a mandatory minimum wage are more detrimental than they are beneficial.
Okay. And just for clarity, for anybody who's watching, that hasn't been discussed and we're not contemplating it. You just had mentioned, employers should pay more. So I didn't know if that's what you're speaking to, but it doesn't sound like it is.
No,
okay.
Absolutely not on a mandatory basis, on a strictly business necessity basis.
Gotcha. Let's see. Ray, is there good communication and engagement from the city to its citizens? And if not, specifically, what more could we do? What more could be done?
If I were the Ward 2 representative, I would come up with some method of communicating to the people in Ward 2 of what's going on. It's a two-way street communication, right? One is putting the information out there. The other is somebody responding to that information. And I've felt a number of times like I didn't know what was going on, but I realized that I didn't make enough effort to find out what was going on.
Change it to 11:18.
So that would be one of my first things is to communicate to the people in Ward 2 generally.
And do you have any ideas on how you might potentially go about that?
Email is probably the most efficient, but probably not for everybody. So I don't know. I serve on the board of the golf course here in West Glenwood, and that was one of the things that we started doing a few years ago, was just sending out information to the shareholders on what was happening with the golf course, and most of them have been very appreciative of it.
All right. Let's see. Ray, I think we kind of hit it earlier about what your vision for transportation in Glenwood Springs has been. So I think I'll skip that unless you had something more to add. You spoke about options being squeezed over the last 20 years and maybe erecting more stop signs and crosswalks for neighborhoods to limit that. Do you have anything to add to maybe more of a macro vision of what transportation might be in 20 years? Or how we work towards that? I mean, if you were sitting there, Sim City, you're designing the town and designing the transportation networks and, RAPTA and all that, what would be something that could move the needle a little bit?
It doesn't appear that the buses are working. So some big method of getting around town without having to go through town for those people that want to is the target for the big vision, I think.
Okay. Ray, what do you see as the greatest challenge to the city's quality of life?
Traffic.
Okay. Awesome. No, not awesome. Traffic sucks, but no, I appreciate the brevity. Let's see. Shelley, this is your question. I'm going to ask it and you're going to ask it in a better way, but there's been a kind of a push and pull over the years of catering towards tourism and the visitor, sometimes to the extent of sacrificing the quality of life for the resident. have we gotten this balance incorrect? Do we need to rebalance, and how would we go about doing that?
I think you did well.
Okay.
Yeah, and you touched on it earlier, Ray, when you talked about, I think, some of the spending perhaps by the city on flower pots versus potholes. But, you know, I get feedback from residents that they may feel like we're reaching a point where we're being loved to death versus, you know, and so how do you find that balance? At the same time, we have, you know, a lot of business people that depend on it, and they want to keep our tourism economy growing. So how do we find that balance for our residents?
Oh, that's a tough question, and I don't know the answer. My instinct is to come up with some sort of evaluation of the numbers. So where does the money come from, and where does it go, and so where is the balance? And I don't know the answers to those, but if the preponderance of the city's income comes from tourists, then it's appropriate that we accommodate the tourists to continue that. If the bulk of the city's income comes from the people who live here, then that appropriate amount ought to be dedicated to improving their quality of life. So first the perspective, I guess, numerically is what I would want.
Ray, a couple follow up to that. One is, and Jonathan, I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 70-80% of our tax revenue comes from outside the city of Glenwood Springs. 73%. And that isn't just tour. That isn't. Let me just finish. It isn't just tourism. It's also we're a retail center. But part of that revenue is to help support infrastructure, do things like that. Do you see that as appropriate? I cut you off, so I apologize.
Sorry, Charlie. Sorry again. 73% of the gross income to the city is
Sales tax revenue, which is our primary source of income. But we don't know how much of that is local and how much is tourist from outside.
Well, we don't know. Sorry, 73% is both tourist and regional, but not citizen. So, you know, I think it's kind of a back of the napkin figures was that, you know, if 73% of our funds, because we're also a regional retail hub as well. So the people coming from Rifle and Aspen to get their tires changed or oil changes or coming out to dinner, they're not locals, but the locals who live in town in the 81601, I guess, area code in city limits, really all that tax revenue, 73% is other people.
You got to keep in mind, Ray, that sales tax is a very significant portion of our income. I don't know what percentage, but it's really high. So that's how we get money to run the city. That's how we get money to fix the streets. So does that change your answer at all to the last question?
No, not knowing what portion of that sales tax is from people who live in 81601 and people who don't.
Roughly 27% is people who live in 81601. We know that.
27% of the sales of the 73% sales tax?
No, 27, take 100%, 73 cents of every dollar comes from people outside the city. 27 cents comes from inside the city.
Okay, I'm not understanding then.
You know what? Ray, we only got about 5 minutes, so let's just move on to the next one because this is a long conversation.
Yeah, thank you. It is, Scott, get it.
But Charlie, I guess to answer your question as best I can with my limited knowledge now is that, no, the numbers would drive my thinking.
Thanks, Ray. Sorry, we did a horrible job explaining that. That's mostly Charlie's fault. I'm going to give that to Charlie.
I'll take full responsibility.
You got a kindergarten student here who's also part.
No, Ray, you're doing great. Hey, how we'll leave you. This is the last scripted one, and then if other people have a couple follow-up questions, I don't mind going a few minutes over. But this is an easy softball one for you. How can Glenwood Springs best address the homeless issue? What should we do? What's our role?
Well, that's a tough one, and I have thought about it some, and I'm a bit of an old curmudgeon, and one of the things that I say is to quit accommodating them. And I know that sounds cruel and unusual, but it's just a fact. I don't think the problem is going to go away. I think they're going to become more and more homeless. My personal view is that we're bulging at the seams of what our society can accommodate in terms of population. And as those seams begin to bulge, there's going to be more and more people fall out of that bag. So I think a decision has to be made whether to try to accommodate or not to accommodate. And if the decision is made to accommodate, then I think we have to be prepared to spend some money on it.
What do you mean by accommodate? What are you referring to exactly?
Accommodate homelessness.
When you say accommodate, are you saying providing housing? Are you saying we feed them? What exactly are you referring to?
Yeah, maybe not housing, maybe an area other than behind Walmart that's unmonitored and unregulated. Maybe it's housing, but I haven't seen any examples anywhere in the country where that has worked. It may work to some degree, but it's the accommodation side of that. You build 100 bed, 200 people are going to come. I spent a good amount of time in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I saw the homeless situation there grow exponentially while I was there. A lot of that has to do with the climate there. It's not nearly as harsh as our winters. They don't have the harsh winters there. So, and there's lots of bridges, lots of places to live under bridges in the Bay Area. And those homeless encampments weren't really accommodated. They just weren't prohibited. So there's some fine lines, and it's a tough question, but my opinion right now is that accommodation is only encouragement. So you either say, no, we're not going to tolerate homelessness here, or you begin to accommodate. And if you decide to begin to accommodate, then you got to be able to finance it, just like everything else. And priorities would have to be set.
Ray, we are kind of out of time, but the question I'd like to ask at the end is, what would you like to tell us about you being a fellow member of City Council and why you should be that you maybe not have a chance to address so far?
I'm not sure what I would say, Charlie, other than I have some experience working with divergent opinions, as you might imagine, in the construction business. Divergent opinions are common. that's healthy and coming up with the best solutions to problems. And I think I could work in that environment.
All right. Any questions for us, Ray? This has been a very one-way interview, and I don't know. I'm a firm believer in this being a good fit. What are your questions for us?
I don't think I have any. Good luck with your selection process. I hope you come up with somebody who will help.
Ray, thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time to put an application in. Thank you for caring enough to put yourself out there. And regardless of our decision, I would just encourage you to continue to be continue to engage and step forward. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you, Ray.
Thanks.
All right, everybody, can I take about 1 minute to go to the bathroom real quick before we jump on with Ingrid?
Yeah,
2
I was
minutes.
just gonna ask for a 5-minute break. Do we have 5?
Let's do 4 minutes. That way we'll be back at 4:35 on the dot.
Great.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
How could you do that? Charlie, unmute yourself. Hi, Ingrid. Charlie,
Yes, sorry, couldn't find the damn button.
you trying to convince people to vote for 2A?
I'm not trying to convince anybody to do anything. Those weren't I can tell you, those weren't my questions, so.
Okay. Well, it's interesting that a lot of people don't want their taxes raised. But you don't want to raise everyone's taxes, so we'll see.
Yeah, but Tony, you don't want to pay me any more money for anything. That's
I
my
don't.
view. Yeah.
I don't.
And-
My taxes are too high now. You raise those water rates, and Ingrid's listening, but you raise those water rates, you're talking $600 more a year for people.
Hey
Where am I
guys,
supposed to get
guys, we're starting to get into an illegal meeting. This is supposed to be an
I'm
interview
allowed to
process.
talk to Charlie individually, Mr. Godis.
Yeah, but not with all of us present. If our city
Yeah,
attorney wants to weigh in on this, if all of us are present for the purpose of conducting an interview, we talk about city issues, then we run the risk of having an illegal meeting. So we
No.
It's a good point. It's a good point. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I just, given our history, I think we just want to be extra careful. Okay, Ingrid, welcome. It's 4:36. I think we're all pretty much back. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you for putting your application in and taking the time to do this interview and taking the time to care about the city and what goes on here. The questions we're going to ask you today, there's about 15. We might kind of skip around a little bit. We'll definitely have people pop in and ask clarifying questions or ask them in better ways than I'm going to be asking them. And they were all compiled by each one of us. So I think everybody submitted a list of questions, and what you're about to experience is the amalgamation of all those. So with that, is there anybody on here you don't know or you haven't spoken with?
I don't believe so. I think I've had a chance, and you guys can all confirm, but I think I've had a chance to visit with each one of you, and I know you all individually.
Okay, well, we'll skip the introduction part then. Ingrid, if you were appointed, what would your goals be over the next 6 months?
I think more than anything is my goal initially is to just smoothly integrate into the current council. So you guys have already been, heads down doing a lot of work. You've had an interesting last 6 months. And I think what I can bring is good listening ears and an opportunity for, just coming in, having a pretty good working knowledge of a lot of the issues, the city is facing right now. And just in general, feel like I can be a voice of common sense, but more than anything, just a good listener and just an open-minded person hearing all the different perspectives and hopefully making the best decision for the city.
Great. Ingrid, I know the paper also asked this question, but everybody had the same question, so I'll ask it. Do you have any plans at this time, knowing what you know now, whether you would run for re-election or election, whether or not you were appointed or not?
Sure, and I'll give a really similar answer, and that 6 months is probably long enough to know if it's a good fit, if I bring value, and if I think I want to continue on in a helping capacity for the city. But it's premature for me to answer that question. But I'm excited about the opportunity to be on council and see if it is a good fit.
Great. What do you see your role as city councilor being?
I did this morning. More than anything, I think it's just an adversary for my community. Like I said, I'm very active in my community, which means that I talk to a lot of people. I'm super involved in a lot of different activities and events. And during those times, it's an opportunity to hear what my neighbors and community members, business owners, what they are feeling, experiencing, thinking, and hopefully bring that back into council dialogue and help make good decisions for the community.
And Ingrid, to follow up on that, two of our main roles are passing a budget and overseeing staff, city manager specifically. How do you equate your role as a city councilor to those two items?
I think that council is the employer of the city staff. And that's how I want it. I want a top-down approach, meaning that as elected officials, we make decisions that the city managers and the community development, they implement. Because as elected officials, we represent the voice of the community. I think that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. What do you see your skill set? What do you see your skill set and experience bringing value to the current council? How do you see?
Yeah, totally. So For 4.5 years, I've been on planning and zoning, and I've learned the system, the nuances of applications. So, you know, as you guys know, someone comes forward with a new subdivision or an addition to their house that needs a variance or whatever the case may be, even just as a reviewing body for other agencies. And I think that it's our opportunity to understand code, understand the comp plan for the city, and see if each one of those applications aligns with that. So as a planning and zoning commissioner, that's what I've been doing for 4.5 years, and I love it. I've really enjoyed that service in that as a commissioner. So that's definitely one component, and I think probably the strongest for why I think I would be good on council. I've also been a volunteer mediator with Garfield County Courts, so that's really taught me to slow down and hear all sides of any application, any issue, just understanding that nothing should be taken at face value. Everything is complex, and allowing enough time to ask the right questions and to look at all of the necessary data to support it, to understand what the next best step is. I will also say that as a realtor, I understand the community. I've probably driven on every single road here in town. And, you know, there's pros and cons to being in that industry on council, but I can honestly say I know my community and I care about my community. And I think that's probably my greatest strength.
A lot of strengths. It's like, I've done this and I've done this. No, that's great. Ingrid, what do you see are the biggest issues facing Glenwood Springs over the next 2 years and over the next decade?
You know, I think for the next 2 years is just recovering from this very bizarre and unexpected year of 2020. Just understanding who has been impacted negatively. Other industry, you know, some industries have been negatively impacted and some have not. They've actually had bad years. So just taking that and understanding where and when we need to support which businesses and to move us forward and kind of get back to a new normal. And then 10 years, I think it's going back to things like transportation. It's going back to things like how to have tourism work for us, but not like the concept of loving us to death. How do we take all those and how do we make a really good plan for the community? I'll say that one of my big beliefs in a good council is that great communities are usually by design. And I think the design falls, the responsibility ultimately is in the council.
That leads into fantastically a question that Shelley has for you.
Okay.
About the balance between tourism and you just asked it so much better, Shelley. I just have to give it to you, but about the balance between tourism and residents. So I'll just turn it over to you to ask the question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just that concept, and it was actually mentioned, it's been mentioned by every applicant now. It's just hearing from people that, you know, there's concern about losing the focus on family for our community and kind of our authenticity of Glenwood Springs as a great place to live. And so how do we find that balance of promoting ourselves as a tourist destination and accommodating our visitors and also focusing on quality of life for our residents? And another part to that question is, what's the city's role in that? What do you see our role as?
You know, I think that historically we have always been a destination, a resort destination since the late 1800s. And it's obviously, you know, a huge, what is it? 3/4 of our tax revenues come from that. So that's that is something that we need, not necessarily tourism, but outside money coming in. So we need to always understand how that economy or that sector of the economy supports our community. And with that in mind, we have so many people who are employed through it. So, you know, they're able to live in this community because of the tourist economy. And at the same time, it creates some impediment to, you know, just even trying to navigate the streets on a busy Labor Day weekend. And I feel like, finding a balance where we hear the community members and what they want to see, and also what amenities are out there, I think is finding that balance. And I don't know exactly what the answer to that is. This is where that complex idea of every different issue has so many different components to look at. I haven't had a chance to look at all of it. I have an opinion as a property owner and a business owner, all of those, but not as a council member. And that's something that I look forward to understanding a little bit better. And how the role of the city, I think the role of the city is to balance it. So I think I kind of answered that.
Thank you. Let me scroll
Hold on,
back.
I was trying to unmute. Ingrid, a follow-up to that. I recently, as we've approved some of these larger developments over the last year, people seem to be saying no more growth in Glenwood. And I don't know exactly what they mean by that, but assuming there's this debate, and it's happened up and down this valley in the past, and you've been lifelong resident essentially, how do you see that debate? How do you see Glenwood fitting in that debate? Do we have growth? Don't have growth? If we have growth, what would you envision that to be?
Charlie, can I just jump in real quick? That's a very different question than we've asked any other candidate. And so you're probably more familiar with labor law, but I don't know. Is that a fair question to ask Ingrid when we didn't ask the other two candidates about that? That's a pretty big issue.
I don't know.
I'm very interested to hear the answer, but I'd be very interested to hear the answer from the other two candidates as well.
And I don't have any problem giving them a chance. I frankly didn't think of the question just now. So I apologize, but that question popped in my brain when Ingrid was giving the last response. Carl, maybe you can weigh in.
I mean, I'm just going to jump in and say, I think work through the rest of your questions or ask it in a similar fashion. I think is fair to the other candidates as well as council. Maybe come back to it if you have time at the end of the interview.
Okay.
It's a great question. I wish you would have thought about it with Monica. Let's see. Let me jump back up here.
Can you ask about the city questions, Jonathan?
Yes. Okay. Is that where we're at? Okay. Yeah. Ingrid, how do you feel about the ballot issues directly impacting the city, specifically 2A and 7A?
So I know, Gallagher is 2A. Well, it's not 2, I shouldn't say that. Gallagher on a whole is a statewide dialogue. And more than likely, it appears the general consensus is probably to repeal it, but we don't necessarily know what direction that will go. So really, our question on the ballots for the city is it was attempting to do some foresight in the event that things change. So, when I see it, obviously it's not actually as clear to the average person out there that what the goal is to make sure and ensure that we have proper money for firefighting, for schools, things along those lines, the balance that we historically have had with Gallagher. And so in this case, I am supportive of it, but I do think that it was a little premature to put it on our ballot, not knowing exactly what direction Gallagher would go. So, but I support it.
And 7A, are you familiar with 7A?
Yeah, and that one to me, the River District, the rivers are the lifeblood of our communities. So anytime there's an opportunity to support better management and understanding and just the interagency relationships that exist with it, I feel like it needs to be properly funded. We historically had more of an agricultural area. Now tourism is such a big component of how we use our rivers, and making sure that we have the support that we need through there. I'm in support of that as well.
Ingrid, how big of a threat is the RMR mine, and are we doing enough to fight it? Or conversely, are we doing too much to fight it? So
in this case, I think I mentioned recently to someone that's the sticker strip mine with the X across it is the first bumper sticker I'd ever put on my car. I grew up with parents who said no bumper stickers. And so it was the very first bumper sticker I'd ever put on. And it's because I think it's that big of a deal. When you look at air quality, traffic, I mean, when one of our biggest tourist destinations is adjacent to this property, it's a concern. I think it's a concern that it impacts the whole county as well. And I think that good communication between our Garfield County commissioners and the city and any other agencies, I think all of that is so incredibly important.
Ingrid, we committed, I believe, a year ago to spend $1 million of public funds to fight the strip mine. Do you think that was a good use of money, of taxpayer money?
The thing, I'm gonna pause on an answer like that because it is so loaded. You're asking me if I approve it without actually knowing what it constitutes. If you're saying $1 million and 300,000 of it was for something that wasn't very effective, then I'm probably not going to be in agreement with that. So that's probably better understanding me, is that I'm one to want to slow down and understand before I just give an off the cuff answer. So I do believe that money needs to be given to that. I think it's a worthwhile pursuit, but how that money is allocated, I'm cautious to say definitively yes or no.
Okay. Ingrid, what do you think the city should do to bring businesses in that can fill the large gap in our empty stores? Obviously, American Furniture, soon to be Office Depot, Safeway, Kmart, just pick one. What do you think is the city's role in that, and what else can we be doing?
I think recently I used a good analogy that when I did own a bakery, I played music that really played for the whole audience. I told the kids, like, no Black Sabbath is what I would always say as a joke. And I think that what that is kind of an analogy for is that it's the city's responsibility to create an environment that makes it so that these big box stores can thrive and want to be here. So when you look at these desolate, like American Furniture, that whole complex does have some aesthetic decline. And, West Glenwood, we had blight conditions defined, it met every criteria for blight conditions. I think that we have a responsibility to understand, it's not necessarily our job to go out and headhunt these businesses, but we certainly can support initiatives to bring them in. I think Councilman Hershey has a question.
I was going to ask Mayor Godis if I could ask a follow-up.
Please.
But I can't believe that we badmouth Ozzy Osbourne, but whatever.
It wasn't I personally.
No, but I understand you made a very good point. You want to attract the masses. Yeah. So, I think people forget in Glenwood how successful the Meadows is and how, thank God, when I think of these COVID issues, but you were a business owner, my understanding is downtown. I know downtown, and that's a different sort of dynamic than maybe the Meadows or Office Depot or Safeway or the West Glenwood Mall. How can we do that? Be more, less Ozzy Osbourne and more, elevator music so that we can appeal to these masses in Aspen and Rifle, but tourists and people from the Front Range in those areas to have more successful business. What do you foresee there?
Well, I think we're already doing it. I think so much of the time the plan is already in place. I think with 6th Street, 6th Street hasn't come to fruition completely yet. But even 7th Street and the whole, all the improvements under the bridge, they definitely are moving in the right direction for a certain subsector of businesses. Now that takes care of, restaurants and small, boutiques and stuff. You're asking, how do we appeal to the big box stores? And that is something that I don't have the magic answer for. I wish I did, but I think that there are probably people out there who are experts in understanding the components that bring big box stores in. And it's maybe part of our dialogue and to bring those people in or have a better understanding of what we could do.
Thank you so much.
Ingrid, I may have heard you wrong because I am old, sometimes have trouble hearing. But if you, did you say West Glenwood was a blight, or did you mean West Glenwood something was a blight?
Yeah, so I want to say, and you guys might remember it, it was about 2 years ago, we had a study done and there were some blight conditions that existed in West Glenwood along the corridor. And I believe that there was some interagency funding that supported some of the improvements down there. Is that correct?
Yeah, we created urban renewal district essentially in the West Glenwood Mall.
Yeah.
So I didn't want you to get cross-raising your constituents saying West Glenwood was a blight. I think you meant the commercial thing. So I just want to make sure you're clarified.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
That's exactly, yes, it was mostly along the I-70 corridor that there were some conditions that existed, and there were some improvements made, and I think they did a nice job.
Ingrid, let's see. What is the city's greatest economic opportunity? And I guess conversely, what is the city's greatest economic threat in the next decade?
I feel like maybe it's both the same answer. I think recreational tourism, I think tourism in general is probably our greatest opportunities. We're just on the precipice of, I feel like, really seeing what we can make from mountain biking trails and, like alternative recreation. But I also think it brings in more tourism, which in turn brings in that loving Glenwood to death component. And so I think that would be it. Now, I will also say that I feel like attainable housing is also a huge component of challenge. Having more homes available for middle entry or even beginning, home ownership there's just not enough availability. So that's a challenge as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that. What do you think should be the city's role, if any, in affordable housing, attainable housing, and what can we do to help solve that? And to your question, why is it a problem?
Well, I think it's a problem because a lot of people want to live in our community who can't always, what exists in Glenwood is that it feels like there's quite a few homes that are a much more expensive price point. And then there's quite a few we've especially recently introduced through a lot of these developments, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments that are for rent. So where do the people who are working at Valley View, working for the fire department, working, at the school district, where do they find homes in our community so that when, their kids are sick, they don't have to drive a half an hour or an hour to go home to pick up their kids from school because they work in Glenwood? How can we find that balance? So the answer to that question is so much more complex than I can probably answer in this. But I will say that when we have developers bring plans, when we're working on long-term plans, we can encourage the incorporation of more townhomes and entry-level homes into those plans, where if you look at the comp plan says that we'll have diverse types of lodging, and even in code, it says that a project will have a certain number of diverse types of housing types. And yet so often when we approve these projects, that's not the case. And so I do think that that's one way we can definitely encourage that, is just by adding in and encouraging and supporting more alternative types of homes and properties within these projects before they're approved.
Can I follow to that? So do you mean maybe that if you were looking at that, would that be a change in code? Maybe to say, 10% has to be a different side. I mean, do you see like a change in code to kind of address some of this? And
I think it's already in code. I think that if you look into code, you would see that there was foresight, especially in the 2018 code revision. I would say that it's in there. It's just a matter of we get developers who come and bring us these projects and they choose to ask for variances on items like that.
Uh-huh. So I'm just going to take, we recently approved a development that required diverse housing because of the acreage, and they put in 1 duplex and then the rest was apartments. Is there a way to address that at the P&Z level or the city level to say, we meant 10, 15%. We didn't mean just 1. I mean, that's what I'm looking at when I'm saying code, because they did conform, they conformed to code.
Well, I think that, so mentioning the 2018 code, that's what I'm familiar with. I worked on that quite a bit. I really enjoyed the process of revising that code. So what I'm hearing, and there's a couple other issues that I think also have come up, is that while the code revision was wonderful and really necessary, there's some nuances of it that still could have some fine tuning. So if we repeatedly hear a concern with something, then we have a workshop on it, and we concurrently, maybe with the Housing Commission, with Planning and Zoning, we say, what's the best route and how should this language read? That would be my recommendation.
Okay, thanks.
Let's see. Ingrid, is there good communication and engagement from the city to its citizens? And if not, what more can be done?
Sure. Well, I will say that the last 6 months has given us all a huge challenge, and certainly hurdles that we didn't expect as far as what needs to be communicated to constituents. It's definitely been uncharted territory. And so with that in mind, I would say that, is there room for improvement? I think there's always room for improvement. I think there's always a better way to, or a more forward-thinking way to make sure that we are communicating with people well. I think that Hannah Klausman has done an excellent job. A little kudos to her. She jumped into the job at a very difficult time. And I think she's done I've seen messages on different forums that I didn't ever expect to see communication disseminated through. I also think that, similar to certain changes to code, like when we did the short-term rental revision, we put out questionnaires to the community. And I love that kind of dialogue. I think that it gives an opportunity for our community to feel heard. It also gives us the opportunity to hear more than just the voices who come to a city council meeting. It allows us to have data. If we have 500 responses and 500 say this or whatever, it's data, and data helps us. It drives our decision making.
Ingrid, what is your vision for transportation in Glenwood Springs for the next 10 years?
So my vision is to admit that I don't know a ton about transportation. There's a transportation commission. We have so many other communities that are dealing with these same things. So the idea that we get feedback from other communities and we come back and we say, how best can we address the issues that we do have? And we don't put blinders on. We do have issues. We have a lot of people trying to get through a very small channel. And it's not people just trying to move around within our community. They're trying to get past our community. We're just a throwaway. But it's always been that way. So what's my vision? My vision would be to be better educated in order to help make good plans and design for the future.
Ingrid, I appreciate that response. One of the questions I asked one of the other candidates was, the traffic in Grand Avenue tends, when it slows down, to push traffic into the neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see we address that issue to keep the neighborhoods, the neighborhood traffic only?
Yeah, I think that the bridge project was definitely, it illustrated how much people do that and how much it impacts, when kids can't play in the street anymore. But could they ever? These are busy streets regardless, even if Grand Avenue is busy. Once again, I'll say that there are experts beyond me in traffic I've seen these. I have a few different applications that I've looked at through planning and zoning. There are people who have master's degrees in transportation. They know, I can't even imagine how many cars they've counted in their careers. But the reality is they know this stuff so much better than I do. And that if this interview hopefully illustrates anything, is that I'm not one to act like I have all the answers. Instead, I'm one to say, give me the data, talk to the right people, and then collectively as a council, let's make a decision that really works for our constituents. You like the ambiguity there? Like that.
You sound like a politician.
No, yeah, go ahead.
I was
No.
kidding by that too.
Ingrid, let's see. What do you see as the greatest challenge to the city's quality of life?
Beyond RMR, I think that's could potentially be one of the biggest impacts. And I think that what that illustrates is that any business, any industry that has a negative impact on our lifestyle, that's probably the biggest challenge that we have.
Let's see. I think Shelley asked that. How can Glenwood Springs best address the homeless issue? What role do we have as well?
Yeah, so this is definitely a systemic issue, but it's an interagency issue too. So the more often than not, and I don't have all the details, but it's my understanding that so many of these homeless camps actually are on county property. And so, we have an issue that trickles down from county property, and how much we can actually do, we're limited by. It's also an issue across the country. We're not the only ones dealing with this. And at the same time, I want to handle it with some dignity, grace, respect for those communities. How we do that, I don't have all the right answers, but I do know that a certain level of accountability from the county is maybe a good first start. But also just talking to them and making a plan. Once again, I'll go back to that good design makes for good communities. I believe that to be true. And a good design means talking to all the players of an issue and coming up with a solution.
Ingrid, I believe that's the last question I had scripted out. Does anybody have any other questions for Ingrid? Or Charlie, do you want to ask your question?
So I'll ask the basic last question that we've covered before, but there may be other follow-up. But we've asked you a bunch of questions. What would you want us to know about you as a candidate to be a member of this council that we haven't asked you and you think is important?
I think more than anything is that I come with an open mind. I come understanding the issues within Glenwood and caring enough to want to serve. But I don't come thinking I have all the answers or that what has been done before has been done wrong. I believe that at every juncture, players come in to strengthen and support our decision-making bodies so that we can go into the next decade with hopefully a really strong community that supports the next generation. And so as a mother and a wife and a daughter and all these hats that I wear, I want my community to support the people I love and the people that are my neighbors and the people that I care about. And so I think that, coming in and wanting to do the best for the people of Glenwood, that's probably going to be my biggest strength.
Ingrid, what questions do you have for us? This is a two-way interview. You're interviewing to see if you want to join this team. So what are some things that, seem to be up to speed on a lot of the issues, but what are some things that you need to know about us or the city that would help inform your decision?
That's always, isn't that the ultimate question at the end when you're in a job interview and then they ask you and then you pause and you're like, oh gosh, I didn't think about this question. I think more than anything is, maybe individually, just kind of a kumbaya moment. Why are you all on council? You didn't expect that, did you?
Jonathan, that's like the George Costanza question. We're like, okay, bye, thank you.
Well, it's only slightly better than what are your weaknesses? Like that is the worst interview question of all time. Sorry, Charlie. No, I think it might be different for each of us, why we're on council and what it has attracted us to run or to put our name out there originally. I would say for myself, I'll just speak that why I wanted to get involved initially was pretty myopic in that I really wanted to help South Glenwood. I thought there was this imbalance between downtown and my ward, but really quickly find you're part of a team and that, you're part of Team Glenwood and the wards don't matter near as much. And so I guess I've just found myself as part of this team, both with city council, my city councilors and staff and boards and commissions and volunteers that has just been really inspiring to me.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, can
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I won't get into my personal, I don't know why that would really affect you, but just as a team, what would you bring to the team, or what do you want do you think it's a good team, or we need to change the team, or what would you bring as an asset to this group of people?
Well, in full transparency, I've had an opportunity to visit with you independently, and I see you all as having a common ideology that you're doing this for the betterment of Glenwood, that you're serving because you care about your community. Now, what your issue, that prompted maybe wanting to run, or what the current agenda items that maybe you're more passionate about, all differ. But collectively, I truly do feel like you guys are all doing this for the community at large, just the same reasons I would want to do it.
I ran for the free pizza and the free lasagna, and then COVID came, and now I have to make my own.
That was one of the planning and zoning commissioners.
And the birthday cake, Tony.
Oh, and the birthday cake, and the goodbye birthday cake if someone were to leave city council, and I missed that too.
Yes, we did get gypped out of the free dinners every other Thursday.
The free
and a rec center pass, my rec center pass.
Yeah, and the goodbye Rick Voorhees cake that I never got.
Maybe it could be the most expensive dinner that you ever got if you count your hours.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Although with planning and zoning, we did enjoy our meals, and that has been a deficiency since we went to Zoom. So maybe one benefit that I bring to you guys is that I do know the structure of meetings, and I know how to do Zoom now because I've been doing Zoom meetings for 6 months. And that alone, the fact that I know when to mute myself is and to unmute myself, more importantly, when to remember to unmute. That's something that I bring to the table.
Ingrid, I want to address your question in maybe a little bit different fashion, having worked with these people here on the council for the last year and a half, or I guess a year and a half. I think each and every one of us in our own way is dedicated to service to the city. I think we believe strongly in the greater good of Glenwood, and we may have different views from time to time on things, which is good intercourse as far as our conversation. But I think we're all dedicated to serving the community in a way that we think, from our myopic point of view, is hopefully it represents what the citizens want.
Yeah, that's great. I can honestly say that I truly believe that from having visited with you all.
We have a couple minutes left. Charlie asked the question earlier, and I'm like, don't ask that, but I don't know, knock yourself out.
What's that?
Do you remember what that was, Charlie?
I mean, if I could ask, it's great. I mean, I wish I'd asked every candidate, because it's been troubling me, and that is, we seem to be getting feedback from the citizens. I read in the letters to the editor of the paper, and sometimes in some of our meetings as we look at developments, that we don't want to grow anymore. No growth. We don't need any more people here. And that affects the quality of life issue. And what did Glenwood mean to me when I moved here? And, when I moved here, you could walk across Grand Avenue any time of day. As long as you look left and right, you were fine. You can't do that anymore. You got to traffic the light. So that may be an issue to address here and we need to certainly get input from the public more on this, but any thoughts on that?
Well, I think what you just said is getting the public feedback. Ultimately, we are representatives of our wards and the collective citizens of Glenwood. And if we put feelers out there via a Google poll or whatever format we do it in, and the general consensus is that people don't want zoning that allows for X, Y, or Z, then I think when we have workshops with planning and zoning and with council and with, just the entities that make those decisions and changes, we need to implement the community's feedback into it. And now, while we may individually believe otherwise, I don't think that we need to remember that, as elected officials, that we are representing our communities.
I guess I would just put out there, if either Mr. Small or Ms. Woolley, I probably just pronounced your last name wrong, want to give an answer to that question, I would love to have them send that to the mayor and he could distribute it to the city manager and the rest of us, because it may become a very important issue over the next couple of years. And I don't want to give them, I want to shortchange them. They don't get a chance to answer that. So maybe some way we can get that question out to them and give them a chance.
I think Charlie, that's a great idea. Let's have it, instead of going through me to the city manager that then get distributed, let's just have it go right to Deborah. And I will ask Deborah if she will reach out to the two candidates to ask them that question. If they respond, then she can just get that answer directly back to us. I think that's,
yeah, and if she wants some clarity or better way to ask it than I actually did to Ingrid, I'd be happy to give her some wording of what I thought. So,
Jonathan, would that be in written form, that answer, or is that just Deborah will
yeah,
ask the question?
I think they can have a chance to answer it in written form. I don't know that it's a huge deal.
I think Ray Schmall is still a participant.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll just say this, Ray. If you're on and listening, I can move you to panelist. We will say goodbye to Ingrid. Thank you very much for her time. Thank you for applying again. Thank you for serving the community as a P&Z member, and hopefully applying to be on council. And we encourage you, regardless of the outcome, to stay involved and to continue to be involved in the city.
But Jonathan, there was one more important question you forgot.
What is your favorite, if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? No?
More important than that. If we ever meet in person again, would you make chocolate chip cookies for council? Just kidding.
Not a requirement.
Yes.
Not a requirement, but would you? No, okay. Thank you, Ingrid.
Baking favorite requests, and I'll bring them to council meetings if we ever meet in person again.
Well,
I brought cookies one time. He didn't ask me to bring cookies, so.
Well, I am asking. Okay, thank you.
There's a reason Charlie would never ask again.
Yeah,
I figured.
Thank you, Ingrid.
Thank you, Ingrid, so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Ray, if you're on, we'll just knock you out and I'll promote you to a panelist, and we'll just ask you Charlie's question, and then that's, try to give everybody a quick a minute. So Charlie, would you ask that question of Ray? Ray, are you on and available to at least press unmute? And he might not be, he might have just logged off. So I'll tell you what, Charlie, we will just ask that, I'll just have that go out through the city manager and they can respond in writing.
That's fine. I was just giving Ray a chance. It took him a minute to get on the first time, so. Maybe just didn't disconnect.
I mean, it's probably not that big of a deal, since like 15 of the 16 questions were identical. I don't think that that one question probably gave us dramatic insight or disadvantaged any candidate. So I don't know that it's actually that big of a deal.
But I think it'd be good to give it a chance. So, because it was brought up that we didn't ask anyone else. Okay,
All right.
no problem.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. All
Need a
clear as day
motion?
now. And next steps, we will have a special meeting on Tuesday, apparently the 27th. Special meeting to to select Rick Voorhees' replacement.
I have that meeting at 1:30 to 3. Is that what everybody else has?
I thought it was still this week.
I'm wondering, have we figured out the voting format and all of that, or will you be working on that?
This is Carl. Yeah,
Carl.
we're going to work on that. 3 candidates is obviously easier than the last time we did this, when we Jim's vote was complicated, to say the least.
Right.
So we'll take a look at that. I'm guessing it can be a pretty straightforward, just my gut
Down.
one ballot, at most two, and we'll get there.
Okay, great. Thanks, Carl.
Sure thing.
All right. Thanks, folks.
Hey, thanks. Good night.